and where you're from.
And we're
Uh,
going to be recording this session, this
yes,
webinar.
we are going to be recording this webinar. Uh, let's see.
Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and start, Polina.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't know, can you hear the dinging when people are entering? Dinging.
I'm going to let people in, but you go ahead and start.
Okay, wonderful.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yes, look at that. I'm so excited to have everyone here. Welcome to our webinar, Navigating Difficult Conversations. It is 12:01 exactly, Pacific Standard Time. So I'm actually in Hawaii, so it's 9 a.m. for me. And I'm so excited to be here. First of all, we have this an incredibly popular webinar and topic that we wanted to bring to you today. And we're just excited. We're going to do a step-by-step version of how to navigate difficult conversations. Again, for those of you who are from our ATD conference, welcome to our webinar. Welcome back. And then for those of you who are from my personal Instagram, if you follow me on Instagram, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited that you guys have taken the time to learn this process. And also, I'm grateful to be here. Guess what, you guys? I have, the most amazing psychologist ever to set foot on this earth, Dr. Lola Gershfeld, who also happens to be my incredible mom.
Thank you.
So, welcome. And
I
yeah,
see that some people are entering where they're from. That sounds great. Go ahead and if you'd like to share where you're located, we have Birmingham, Alabama. We have Saudi Arabia. That's wonderful. And
yes.
in Louisiana. That's great. Thank you.
So, okay, just a little bit about us and what we're doing here. If you're new and have never seen us before, we're so grateful for you to be here. Dr. Lola is an organizational psychologist. If you saw us at the ATD conference, you would know she's the developer of the EmC process, the emotional connection process. She's a published author. So this webinar stems from her very popular book called Navigating Difficult Conversations. She also lives with her husband of 43 years in Fullerton, California, and has been doing this for 15 years. And it's transformed completely her life. And then she just reeled me into this incredible process when she first started learning this. And I got sucked into it because it works so well in my personal life and for my personal relationships. So I became a certified EMC trainer. I am the marketing officer at EMC Leaders. I do have a bachelor's in marketing. I love marketing. Can you tell? I just love connecting with people and teaching this kind of stuff. I also am a content creator. For those of you who are from my personal Instagram, if you're curious, you can find me at Life with Five Kids. I'm a single mom with five kids, and I've actually taken this process and integrated not only into my work career, but also in my personal life, which I know my mom has as well. And we have integrated it into our relationship, which has really transformed how we live our life. So it's been so exciting, and we're very excited to share this process with you. So we're going to get to exactly why. Why did you get here today? So if you find yourself in disagreements, being disengaged, being blamed or blaming others, being judged or judging others, if you feel stuck in conflicts or you're unhappy at work, not satisfied with your team or with your boss, if you're feeling exhausted, then you're in the right place. If you don't feel any of these, I mean, this is still an amazing process to practice, but this is really what we're looking for. If you find yourself in any of these situations, which I feel is very common in all of our relationships, but we're specifically focusing on business relationships today, then this webinar is for you. So, yay, I'm so excited. Can you tell how much I love this? It's really changed my life. And this is what you're going to get from this webinar today. We're going to teach you a specific step-by-step process that's going to guarantee results. This is what I love about it. It's simple, it's step-by-step, and you follow exactly what we're going to teach you in the webinar today. It's guaranteed to work. You're going to have stronger communication skills. And instead of shutting down or blowing up, you're going to be able to help yourself calm down, regulate, de-escalate, and then communicate your feelings. You're gonna have the ability to restore trust and safety. Conflicts get resolved instead of recycled, which we know is a very, very common thing. If we don't really talk in a way where we feel heard and validated, then those conflicts keep coming up over and over again. You're gonna have increased engagement, motivation. You're gonna have improved collaboration across the teams. If you run a large team, if you're a trainer, if you are part of a team, this kind of communication skill is going to be incredible for collaboration. You'll have a reduced turnover if you're a business owner. And if you see that you have a lot of people, like this is one thing that we notice here in Hawaii as well, is there are a lot of people that just really have a difficult time staying in the workplace. You're also going to feel heard and understood, safe to speak up, feel valued, able to handle conflict without fear. And finally, the best and most important skill I feel to feel purpose and meaning in your life. So, welcome, welcome to navigating difficult conversations. Okay, so we're going to start off with the science behind emotional connection. But before we get to doing that, I'm going to stop and share. I'm going to stop really quick to share. Okay, because I just want to make sure that I give you guys a big virtual hug for being here. And I want you to take a moment to think about a situation that you possibly could be experienced at your workplace. There's 13 of you guys here. And if you feel like you have a difficult situation right now in your workplace or in your life in general, I want you to write it in the chat. And in the chat, just share. You can write it directly to me, or you can share in the chat, like, what is a situation that has come up that has been difficult for you? And we're going to get to the science of emotional connection. So take a few moments to write down. You can directly send it to me, or you can also send it. Ooh, my share screen is not working. You can send it in the group chat, and I'm going to go ahead and reopen that presentation. There it is. Okay, so let's get to the science behind emotional connection.
All
And
right.
Lola's going to take it away.
Thank you, Polina. It's so
Yeah.
nice, everybody, to be here with you. Well, the emotional connection process really is grounded in over 50 years of amazing, amazing scientific research, specifically in attachment theory, which started with John Bowlby, 1950s. Oops, go back. Yeah, not yet.
There we go.
And then he basically said that we need emotional connection with people we depend on. And I'll cover that a little bit more after this. But then we also have Carl Rogers, who came along and basically said, well, by the way, people grow when they feel safe and connected with each other. So in any situation, any environment, when people have that safety and connection, they start to be more curious, they start to engage better, and they become more supportive of each other. And then in 1967, Salvador Minuchin, who was the founder of system theory, said that in a system, whether it is a family system or a team system or company system, people depend on each other. And this dependency actually creates a need for connection. So all of these theories build on each other's theory, basically confirming the need for emotional connection. And Fritz Perls, who talked about experiential theory, he said that if you want to change behavior, you have to create new corrective emotional experience. And as you know, in companies, when we talk to people, when we work together, We do often sometimes want people to understand what's going on, and we want to see a change in behavior. All of these improvements are all about change in behavior. And Fritz Perls says that the best way to do that is when you can create that new corrective experience where people can actually do change intrinsically. So you don't want to tell people how to change, but you want to create that connection with them so they would want to change and they look for that change themselves. And I'm just going to jump in to Sue Johnson, who was a developer of emotionally focused therapy for couples. And she talked about relationships, adult relationships. And she basically said that in order for us to create better connection and better relationships, we have to learn how to work with emotion. So emotional connection is all about how to tune into that emotion. So we can go to the next slide where I'm just going to talk a little bit about John Bowlby. Polina?
So, yeah, there we go.
Oh,
Just really quick, for those of you who are asking in the chat, if you want to, Monica, you could just send your workplace situation directly to the meeting chat, or you can send it like directly to me. So,
yeah, exactly. So, understanding the importance of emotional connection work starts with learning about attachment and understanding the importance of creating that secure relationship in our workplace. We need emotional connection because it's part of our survival code. So, I'm going to say that again. It is part of our survival code. That's how our nervous system is wired. When we have a secure connection, when we have that security in our relationships, our nervous system is relaxed. We can learn, we can engage, we can be focused at task and at work. We can actually think about the company as a whole when we are connected, when we have that secure connection relationship. When we lose that connection, and if it starts going over and over again, like if we lose that connection for just a moment and then we regain that connection, that's great. But if we lose that connection and we can't really reconnect or repair that connection with people that we depend on, like our boss or our manager or our colleagues, our team members, then we start to feel stressed. Okay, we start to feel that anxiety inside, and what this called a separation anxiety. And when that happens, our nervous system becomes very vigilant for threat. It's like more stressed. So we get easily triggered. It's hard for us to focus. It's hard for us to engage in that moment. So it really impacts our performance, our well-being, our everything that we do. It impacts that connection is so critically important to us. And oops,
my computer is glitching a little
that's
bit. There
okay.
we
It's
go.
good. Yeah.
There we
Jaak
go.
Panksepp talked about how the brain responds to that emotional disconnection. He talked about that when we get that disconnection, our brain has this pathway called attachment panic. And it's a pathway that tells us that we are no longer safe. Okay, because connection, when we are connected, other people look out for us, right? They have our backs. But when we are not connected, we feel alone. We are completely isolated in that moment. So that is why sometimes you see that people only think about themselves, or they act or they make decisions to benefit them, is because they're not connected. They don't have that secure attachment. They don't have that security in their relationship. And we often see that when people are disconnected, we see them take one of two positions. Because they want connection, they either pursue the connection, they go into that mode of complaining or blaming, whining, maybe blaming or judging. As soon as you notice those type of behaviors, you know that the person is disconnected. They are trying to reach, but they are not using effective strategies. So that's why they get more disconnected, because people don't like when they're being judged or blamed or somehow criticized. Or they start to withdraw, they shut down, or they minimize the need for connection. They say like, I don't need you, I don't want to talk to you, I don't need to work with that person, I don't need to have a relationship with this person or that person. So they use these protective behaviors to really protect themselves, but they also protect the relationship. If you think about it, because when people get stressed and disconnected, their nervous system goes up in that stressful mode, they get scared to create more disconnection. So that is why withdrawers, they withdraw, and pursuers, they pursue. And so they get into this negative pattern, what we call a negative dance, so to speak, where one starts to kind of like want to connect, but they complaining, or they judging, they sending a lot of emails, they trying to pursue the person. And the more they pursue, the other person gets more and more withdrawn and avoids because they get overwhelmed. So both people are overwhelmed, but the way they deal with their emotions, they don't even understand that it's pushing them to respond in this way. So we look at interaction as a dance, and emotion is the music of the dance, right? Emotion is the music of the dance. So if you think about every time you interact with a person, you inviting them to the dance floor. Okay, you inviting them to the dance floor, and then you start to dance. And I love to dance Argentine tango. And the difference between regular dance and Argentine tango dance is the regular tango, it's very structured, like you learn the routine and then you dance to it. The Argentine tango is improvised, just like a dance, right? Just like interaction. Interaction is improvised because you don't know what the person is going to respond, how the person is going to respond. And so it becomes like you have to learn how to tune into that emotional music. So what the EMC process does for you, it gives you those tools, it gives you that practice where you really become a great dancer. You become like a great dance instructor. And you can learn how to understand that emotional music, how to create that safety in your interactions, how to lead teams into the positive way out of the stuck place, right? When they get stuck in those rigid behaviors of pursue or withdraw. And so you start to see that relationship becomes more and more evolving, and you start to see a change in your culture. I remember working with this company in a biotech company where this team, the commercial team, learned this process, and everybody in the company started to realize, like, wait a second, so there's something different in the way you guys interact. It becomes safer to come to you to ask questions. It becomes easier to talk to you, and it feels like we want to learn the same thing. So another team started to wanting that same relationship, that same interaction, because you start to see there's a flexibility in conversation, there's openness in conversation, there's supportive in the conversation, and that because people are emotionally connected. So the EMC process has really three stages. And every time you do the EMC process, you actually sometimes go through all the stages at once, or sometimes you have to go through like stage one several times because people maybe have been disconnected for a long time, and they really need to really go through that process several times of identifying all of the components in that interaction. And so Polina will take you through those three stages and 9 steps.
Yes. So this is what's beautiful about the science of emotional connection is that it's so effective and it's something that is ingrained in our brain. So the very first step is to de-escalate. So I'm going to ask everyone's participation when I go through these steps. If you have access to the meeting chat, we're going to practice each step just one step at a time. So you get familiar with the simple steps, but how to shift conversations in what you're feeling. So thank you so much, Monica, for sharing what's going on. in your workplace. So I'm going to actually use Monica's example to go through the step-by-step process. And Monica, we're going to help you to not be frustrated anymore, not to lose your patience, and to know exactly what to do. So the very first step is de-escalation. And how do you de-escalate a situation? You create an environment that's safe and accessible. And when you create that environment, then it allows for people to feel comfortable to come to the conversation. And it's like an alliance instead of shifting into what we're typically taught, which is like to blame, to judge, to criticize, to shame. We'll get into that in a little bit. We are able to slow things down and make people feel safe enough where they can actually feel like they're in alliance with you in this conversation. So the first step is to state the disconnection out loud. So we're going to take Monica's example. Monica said that she is a teacher's aide and she doesn't agree with how the teacher leads the classroom. And she's tried to model the ways to have a smooth day with the kids, but when the teacher is in charge, then it's complete chaos. And she also mentioned that she's lost patience and she doesn't know what else to do. So thank you, Monica, for sharing that. So the very first thing is to state the disconnection out loud. So, in order to actually have an impact on someone in a conversation or a situation that's difficult, we have to be able to get down, like taking an elevator down to our deepest emotional levels. So it impacts them in an emotional way. Because inside us, we are what's called intrinsically motivated by our emotions. So that means I know this is funny because I'm going to bring up my kids, of course, because they're like, no, I don't have any feelings. Like when I first started teaching this, they're like, I don't have any feelings. I'm like, oh, are you a robot inside with no feelings? We actually, it's not even possible for us to not have feelings. That's how we were made. So we are intrinsically motivated by every single action, decision that we take, and everything we do in our life is motivated by an emotion. So this is why it's very important. When you're feeling disconnected, I want everyone to get in the chat and I want you to type one of these sentences. It sounds like we are getting disconnected. Our feelings are valid. It makes sense that this is difficult for you. This is difficult for me. Let's take a deep breath and slow things down. Yes, Hernan, I'm just seeing your message. Yes, all of this is going to be recorded. So you guys will be able to have a copy of this conversation, this webinar, as step by step. And then, of course, we have that process all written out for you in our Navigating Difficult Conversations guide and training. So we'll get to that a little later. Yes, Jen says it makes sense that this is difficult for you. This is difficult for me. Okay, so that is the first step. Pick one of those statements and you're going to say it. So, Monica, if you're still in the session, I want you to think if you have that moment to have the conversation with the teacher, you can say, sounds like we're getting disconnected. Yes, Jamel, Natasha, amazing. Our feelings are valid. So, at any moment when you have a disconnected conversation, and guess what? A lot of times we don't actually realize it's happening until we feel it physically in our body. So let's say you had a conversation and the teacher, for example, in Monica's case, and the teacher said something or did something or had a facial expression that kind of rubbed the wrong way for you and you felt it and you didn't realize that it landed on you in a difficult way, but you felt it physically. There's notification. It's like a symptom. It's like the body saying, oh my gosh, what's going on? This didn't feel good. Yes, for Tanya, amazing. So you're going to pick one and you're going to say it. That is step one. You guys, look at how simple it is. Y'all did it. It sounds like we're getting disconnected. It makes sense that this is difficult for you and this is difficult for me. Amazing. Okay, let's go to step two. So this is just learning that when we get triggered, we can slow down and take a deep breath. Yes, that's perfect, Cece. Thank you. So the next step, so that's the first thing you do is you're going to say that one sentence or those two sentences out loud in the moment to the person that you're feeling disconnected with, or you can say it out loud to someone who's available to listen because those we'll talk about what if the person doesn't want to have a conversation? We'll talk about those in a little bit. But yeah, this is an important step. Okay, number two is clarifying your triggers, raw spots, and emotions. Guess what? You don't have to take a guess. We've got it all written down for you. Okay. We want to say the trigger out loud. Sometimes this is like, I like this process too because I like investigating things. Well, I don't know if it's like a Scorpio thing. Anyone else here is Scorpio? I like investigating. I'm like, I want to private investigate what's happening. And, I have 5 kids and 3 of them are teenagers. So it's like there's drama sometimes going on. And we live on a small island. So I'm like, the investigation starts. So when I talk about this with my team and my workplace, we want to get really specific. Okay, so now I need your participation again. You're going to write in the chat, I got triggered when. So think of a time, okay, it could be related to a difficult conversation that you're experiencing right now, or maybe in the past, because the difficult situations, the conflicts that aren't actually communicated in this process, they will linger and stay with us for a very, very long time. Okay, like years and years, all the way until you're in your 70s or your 80s. Time does not heal. What heals are these kinds of conversations. Okay, so what you're going to write, Natasha, you're going to write, I got triggered by your behavior. So we want to this is important to note. We're not blaming anyone, but we want to identify exactly what was the trigger. Did you get triggered by the words, the facial expression, the tone of voice, the behavior, the action, decision? Which one was it? So Cece said, I got triggered when you used that tone of voice and the words. Yep, I got triggered by your behavior. Excellent. So yeah, in Monica's situation, it would be the behavior because she did mention that the teacher, when the teacher, is doing the classroom and her behaving her way, there's like chaos. Okay. So excellent. That's step two. Good job. Look at that. I got triggered by your behavior. Beautiful. Tone of voice. Excellent. So when we do this step, you'll also notice that it's important to kind of identify exactly what that behavior decision. It's really funny. I'm going to bring up my kids throughout this entire conversation because they're also like my little team, right? Yeah, so good question, Monica. We're going to try and keep it super specific as we possibly can. And sometimes we have to be like, sometimes there's lots of layers, So my almost 18-year-old, he will say like, I got triggered by your behavior, Mom. And I said, okay, like what behavior was I doing? Was it how I don't know, I could have ignored him or I turned away from him or I was talking to someone else while he was asking me a question or got interrupted. So we want to try to be as specific as possible. So Monica, for example, in your situation, one thing, like think about one thing the teacher does is that the fact that you're saying, hey, this is a really great way to lead the classroom so there is not chaos. But when I share that with you and the behavior or the action or the decision is to not follow that is very triggering for me. So that's important to identify. Okay, let's say you got triggered by someone's like response or reaction to what their trigger is. Okay, hang tight with me because sometimes this gets a little confusing here. It doesn't matter who got mad first, who got triggered first, who did what first, who did this, who did that. We are not focused on that because each person has their own emotional experience. So no matter who did what first, this is important step two. So Monica says, so better yet, I got triggered by your behavior of making the students wait to get called on instead of using their autonomy to check schedule. Yes. Perfect. That's amazing. Good job. So think specific. So Jen and everyone else who mentioned I got triggered by whatever it is that the trigger was, think specific things. Because it could be a facial expression, it could be a tone of voice. Okay. And the second part of step two is saying your raw spots. This is what's so great about the process. We have simplified it. You don't have to take a guess. You just get to pick out of these 16 raw spots. These are the most common. I would say 99.999% of the time, one of these raw spots got hit when you got disconnected. So, for example, in Monica's situation, if she possibly felt not being valued, possibly felt like she was getting ignored, maybe not acknowledging the point she's making. Number 10 is communicating needs and getting ignored. So, everyone back in the chat, are you going to write my raw spots that got hit and then put in a few raw spots in relation to whatever situation you are thinking about? So, number one is being excluded or rejected. So, all of these, by the way, are in our program. We teach this master class where you become a master of communicating with these kinds of conversations. So, go ahead and put it in the chat. Maybe you can think about even maybe it's difficult to think of a situation or a conflict you have in the workplace. Maybe there's something else that you're experiencing where you can see what is it? Is it not being valued? Is it turning away? Someone turns away from me, criticizing. So in Monica's situation, if a teacher is not following what she's requested of using the autonomy to check the schedule, then that could be not being valued because maybe Monica, she doesn't value your perspective or experience or opinion, or maybe it's communicating your needs and getting ignored. You'd like to participate in communicating what the needs are for the classroom and for you to keep the classroom cohesive learning environment, and those are getting ignored. So put in my raw spots are.
And
So
I
while
also want
yeah,
to add, I think this is important, is whatever behavior that you're getting triggered with, you need to ask yourself, how does that impact me? So in Monica's case, the information about that, the raw spots are getting hit when not being felt, heard, or valued, which is great. Because if the teacher is not doing something or creating an unsafe environment for students, well, how does that impact Monica? And so I like that Monica had expressed that she felt not heard or valued because she is creating chaos.
yeah. And actually, Monica shared my raw spots that got hit were not being felt, heard, and valued. I'm left with the chaos of the students, and I'm left having to try to keep the kids sitting down, which is such a good point. And it makes sense that you're feeling that way because if you're having to almost like if the teacher has this process that's not effective communicating with the kids, and that's causing chaos, and then you have to be the one to go and try and get everyone to settle down and de-escalate the chaos, that is very, very stressful. And it totally makes sense that you feel that you're not being valued. Jen said, my raw spots are when I feel ignored, disrespected when processes that we agreed upon together are not followed. Okay, so feel ignored. Yes, that would be like number 10, communicating your needs and then getting ignored, or number 16, ignoring your questions. Disrespect is interesting. With disrespect, we typically say we don't feel valued, or maybe we're not we're not being acknowledged. Like you have a point that you're making, and people are not acknowledging the point that you're making. Because disrespect is actually, now a lot of people use that word, but it's not actually a feeling word. And so we tend to say, what is underneath that disrespect? Do you feel disrespected because you're being criticized maybe, or maybe someone is saying demeaning comments towards you? So that's something to think about a little bit deeper. Ratanya said, my response that got hit for me in that moment are you criticizing small details that do not make a significant impact to training. Okay, so Ratanya, that would actually be, yeah, number 6, criticizing. And small details that do not make a significant impact to the training, that would be like your trigger right? We want to focus on the raw spot to that trigger. So criticism and probably Rotanya could be more than one. So it could be not being valued. That's the other one, because if someone's criticizing the training, that just maybe means that they're not valuing your process. They're not valuing what you're bringing to that training. And CC said, my raw spots that hit were when you began criticizing me and saying demeaning comments by jumping to conclusions, not listening to what I am saying. Yes, beautiful. You guys are so good at this, and we're only at step two. Okay, okay. This is amazing. So let's keep going. All right, so you got it that down. If you if you just a reminder, we'll have everything recorded for you. And we do have a book called Navigating Difficult Conversations and the training that goes along with it. So you become a pro at this, you become a master. Wait, I can just tell you. So sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, how are you a single mom of five kids? Like, how do you deal with all these five children? And I can tell you that this process, I'm comforted. I'm comforted in the fact that all right, there's always going to be conflicts. And in your workplace, you're always going to have relationships. Like Dr. Lola said, we are like dancing to this music. But if we're dancing to different music, we're going to step on each other's toes. Okay, once again in the chat for the third part of step two, which is say the emotions out loud. And this is I get so excited. I just have like chills because when you say an emotion out loud, guess what happens? It decreases the intensity of the emotion by 70%. Okay. So that means you can say, my surface emotions are frustrated, annoyed, irritated, alone, confused. And that stating it out loud decreases the intensity. So if you're feeling like Monica, for example, in your experience, if you're feeling like you're losing patience, you're snapping back, you're frustrated easier, that's because these emotions build up conflict after disconnection that's not addressed, that's not communicated. So when we say these emotions out loud, then we are able to lower and de-escalate the situation. And this is that first process of de-escalation. Okay, so back in the chat, my surface emotions are sometimes they could be all of them, but you're just gonna pick three and you're gonna write them in the chat. And then you're going to follow with my softer emotions are we're taking the elevator down. Okay, so just imagine the surface emotions are what you typically see when you get in a conflict with people. And it can be everywhere, anywhere. People that are really close to you, compared to people that are not so close to you. Maybe from your boss or from your colleague. Natasha says, my surface emotions are frustrated, exhausted, and alone. Yes. And then you're going to put in, so everyone in the chat, write your surface emotions. Your softer emotions are going to be worried, isolated, unimportant, dismissed, helpless, let down, hurt, panicked. When I first started teaching, you guys keep going with those softer emotions, and then you're going to write your primary emotions. Okay. We'll get to the fear in a second. Yes, Ratanya says frustrated, inadequate, surprised, dismissed, rejected, isolated. Yes. So if this is very new to you, it could feel so. When I first started learning this, it was so awkward for me. I have both my parents are psychologists, but I actually didn't learn this process until they became psychologists later in their life. So this is like very recent discovery for me. So it was like in my early 30s, that I learned how to say, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling hopeless, I'm feeling panicked, and feel comfortable saying those things. Good, beautiful. My surface emotions are angry, resentful, let down, primary emotions, shame, exhausted, softer, let down. Okay, amazing, amazing, amazing. So what we're teaching you here is how to have this conversations with someone, with the person that you're feeling triggered with. That is ideal. That's what we really would like to do. But sometimes it can be difficult for the other person to feel safe to have this conversation. So you can have these steps in conversation with someone who is also close to you. So let's say, Monica, if you are dealing with your teacher who you're very frustrated with, and you say to her, like, I would really love to have this connecting conversation with you, and I would like to share what's going on with me, and maybe she's not available for that or open to that. You can have this conversation with your colleague or maybe your boss and say, like, hey, I learned this process. This is how I'd like to have a conversation, or maybe a friend, because that will actually help de-escalate to, be able to help soothe what's happening with you. And then when she is ready, you could still have that emotion again. I mean, the conversation again with her. Okay. And sometimes when we have it a couple times, it gives us clarity. It gives us clarity. Okay, so you guys did a great job. My softer emotions are hurt, overwhelmed, let down. Yes. So we want the very important thing to note here is you want to understand your softer emotions and your primary emotions. Because those surface emotions, those are they're on the surface. Show up easier, but it's very difficult sometimes to listen to them, to hear them, to feel them, and to accept them from another person. So those emotions on the receiving end can be scary for someone, as opposed to the softer emotions that are more vulnerable. So, and then the next part to this is an image, the body sensation, and the worst fear. So sometimes we can't actually understand what someone is experiencing unless we have an image. So have you ever heard, you probably have you heard someone say, well, put yourself in my shoes? Well, I can't put yourself in my shoes. I can't expect you to be in my shoes if I don't actually give you an image of what my feeling and experience is. So in this step, we say, okay, my image is, so it would be, for example, I'm gonna just pretend I'm Monica for a moment. And Monica, if you'd like to write an image, you can in the chat. And all of you listening can also add this image in the chat. Imagine, like, for example, Monica, if you are with this teacher and you're trying to communicate how to keep the kids calm, and then she's just constantly ignoring you and not making you feel valued, and then the kids go chaos, and now you have to take care of that chaos and try to de-escalate the situation. The image could be that feeling of like frustration, like hopelessness, overwhelmed. That feeling could be an image like, for example, you're very excited to go show like this big, huge, beautiful balloon you got for all the kids. And then the teacher comes and just takes her little needle and pops all the balloons. That could be an image. Mom, do you have another image that you want to share?
Well, I was thinking about that because, Monica is really trying to help the teacher and really trying to show how difficult it is for her in that moment. It's it's almost like teacher is turns away. So maybe there's a glass door, right? A glass
Hmm.
wall, and Monica is maybe like hungry, and the food is on the other side, and she's trying to get to the food, and she can't because she's hungry, and it just that frustration, right? Or the frustration of having peace and relaxation, and there's a glass wall, and that she just can't get it through.
Yes, that's amazing image. So go ahead in the chat if you'd like to share an image. Sometimes it's intense. Like, sometimes I will say it's like you're standing on the cliff and with your arms open, wanting a hug, and then I'm like running to you, and the person just like moves out the way and I fall off a cliff and I die. That could be how much pain we may be experiencing. And yes, it could be like, wow, that was like a really intense image, but it's true for you. So whatever that feeling that you're experiencing, we want to put it in the image, okay?
I
And
like
then
Monica's image because she's like, my image is like vacuuming with no bag in, right? So it's like
oh
almost
yeah.
like taking the energy out of her. It's sucking the energy out of her, and gets completely exhausted. That's an excellent image.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard that one before.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So then we have the body sensations. So the body sensation is where do you feel it physically? So when I first started doing this, I felt a lot in my stomach, and the stomach is connected to shame. So you could feel it in your heart, in your neck, in your shoulders, in your head. Where do you physically feel the body sensation? What's interesting about this, while you are writing in the chat where you feel it physically, is that if you have a conflict or a disconnection with someone that was like a while ago, like let's say you had a disconnection with your boss like a year ago or 6 months ago or 5 years ago, when you start thinking about the situation, the conflict, you'll actually start to feel the physical pain all over again. So that same pain that you experience when you start talking about the situation, you'll feel it in your body. So where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your stomach? Do you feel it in your head, in your shoulders? Sometimes I've heard people say in their hands, they feel like fire burning sensation. And so write that in the chat where you feel it. I've lost the chat, Mom. So if you're seeing chats, can you say
Oh
them?
yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, so it's good. Like neck and shoulders, Ratanya says, is that I feel the body sensation in my head and shoulders. All of that is actually gives an indication that there's a lot of sadness. And sadness comes because we're disconnected from the people that we care about. So frustrated facial expression, I feel it in my shoulders again. We actually, it's not like we are saying this. It's all by research saying that if you feel it in your chest, that shows fear. If you feel it in your shoulders and your head, that's sadness. If you feel it in your stomach, that is shame. So when you are tuned to your body, you actually get a more understanding of what emotion you're experiencing and how your body responds to it.
Okay, so then you're going to just pick your worst fear about you. So I'm alone, I'm failing, I'll be fired. That's very, very common. You'll either lose your job, you're failing in your workplace. Like that is a common feeling about your worst fear. Then you pick the worst fear about the person that's in the situation. So for Monica, it could be that that teacher doesn't care about you, she doesn't value you, she doesn't trust you. And then what is the fear in the relationship? We'll be disconnected, we'll be stuck, we can't work as a team. So go ahead and pick one and put those down in the chat. And we're going to move on to step 3. Just realize I'm yapping away at this because I love it
Yeah,
so
we need to
much.
move on. But
We
I
need to
what I
move a
want to
little
say is
faster.
this is important step about emotions, because if you think about Fritz Perls, who talked about if you want to change behavior, you don't want to tell people change behavior, like
Yes.
giving feedback. This is not a productive or effective way to do it. You want to be able to share the impact it has on you. Because if you create that emotional experience for them, people will change behaviors themselves.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying was we're intrinsically motivated by our emotions. So when we have an emotion, we're moved emotionally, we are motivated to take action. Okay, next step is identifying automatic thoughts and protective behaviors. So let's get back in the chat and we're going to do my automatic thoughts. So when you get disconnected and you go through that process, we have what's called automatic thoughts. And the awareness of our automatic thoughts gives us the ability to shift and change those thoughts, change the way that we react to the situation. So, what do you do when you get triggered? So, if you're thinking or dealing with a situation, you've put it down in the chat. Now, which one are your automatic thoughts? I have to stop you. I don't care. How dare you? I have to get away. I'll show you what, I give up. I don't need you anyways. So typically withdrawers will, I give up. I don't need you anyways. I have to get away. And then you have protective behaviors that go along with those automatic thoughts. Typically, pursuers, I have to stop you. I don't care. How dare you? Okay, so what are your automatic thoughts? Pick one and
So
write it down. Yeah.
Monica says my automatic thoughts is to run. I take as many breaks as I possibly can. That makes sense. And Rotanya says my automatic thoughts are to get away. That's very, very common. And the CCC says that my worst fear is going through the hard conversation and nothing changing, which leaves
Yes.
me sad and disheartened because where do I go from here exactly? So you always want to recognize that you're in a negative cycle when that happens. And you do have to have this conversation with each other. Eventually, somebody says, is this steps? Are we supposed to say this out loud to the other person? And yes, we want to have two people having these conversations because we want to be connected. The idea is to repair that connection when you get disconnected.
Okay. Let's go back to step three. Where did my step three go? Oh,
Yep.
my computer is.
Next.
Yeah, there we go. Step three. Okay, so now we have the second part to step three, which is saying your protective behaviors out loud. So this is what are your protective behaviors? They could be blame. Oh,
It's okay. Too many. Uh,
yeah. So protective behaviors, while I find this back again, protective behaviors are like if you blame someone, if you judge someone, if you criticize them, do you lecture them? Do you judge, criticize, demand, complain, defend? Do you increase your tone of voice, speed of speech? Do you get busy, numb out? I see all the ladies in the chat, and I know there's some men in the chat too. I have three boys, three of my five kids, and this is an interesting part in this process because this is important to recognize. All of these protective behaviors are very common. It's what we're taught to do in like society. It's automatic for us, but we want to be able to shift this kind of process. So the whole process is teaching you to go from blaming, judging, criticizing, getting busy, avoiding, to being able to have a conversation and share what's happening with you in a way that creates safety and emotional connection after a conflict.
So
So
let me see. Natasha says she goes into I have to stop you, and then she goes to distance, withdraw, get busy. And Rotanya says is to defend, which is very, very common. Both of these are very common. And there's nothing wrong with these protective behaviors, but we have to recognize we do all of them, sometimes. But if we get stuck with in a particular relationship and do them all the time, that is when it creates more and more negative cycles. So the more you avoid and distance, the more the other person gets more anxious and becomes more aggressive with their judgment or criticism or lecturing or complaining. The more they complain and criticize, the more you avoid. So you have to understand that both people are contributing to the negative cycle.
and this is an important thing to note that we avoid at all costs to blame. So, like, we're not saying, oh, it's your fault. Oh, it's your fault. If we go back to that same, oh, she's the one that's not da 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 da. She's the one that each person involved in the conflict is part of this cycle. And I say this a lot to the teams that I work with too, because it's very important to say it out loud. People are very quick to defend and to criticize, complain, to demand, to judge when they also feel that they are in that experience as well. Okay. So let's keep going. We have step four. We're going to raise the awareness of the negative cycle. Okay. So say it's nobody's fault. Yep. All right. Everybody in the chat, it's nobody's fault. Actually, I have a video of my youngest daughter. I think she was 2 years old, Mom. And she's like, it's nobody's fault. It's the negative cycle's fault. So write it in the chat. It is nobody's fault.
And that's really important because this is how we how we can continue to create safety for the people, because nobody wants to be the bad guy, really.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be the bad guy. I really see a huge difference when we start to blame the cycle and say, guys, you guys stuck in this terrible negative dance where you just don't know how to dance together, or you never been taught how to tune into that same music. People start to feel relaxed, and they
Yes.
recognize that, oh, because we've been dancing to different music. Yeah, I've been dancing salsa, you've been dancing tango, and we keep missing each other. So that's a very important step.
These are all what ifs. Like if you're thinking, what if I don't think it's important to have a relationship with my boss, or if you're private about your emotions, or if the CEO is withdrawn, if you don't have a connection or you don't want a connection. The thing is about this process is we want to create a thriving environment. So for all of these what if questions, this process works. So just keep in mind that as you're thinking about all these reasons, maybe your colleague doesn't want to talk about the emotions, or maybe they're not available. It's important to be able to express yourself in this way so you can have this thriving environment. And this is what I noticed that was the most transformational was changing the restructuring the way that the communication happens and the conversations happen to make everyone feeling safe. And when people feel safe and like they have a secure relationship and secure attachment, then there is what's called a thriving environment. Okay.
So, for
So we're,
example, one second, Pauline,
yeah,
with Monica's, we want to have, ideally, we want to have a conversation with your teacher, Monica. You and your teacher, who you are assisting, have this conversation, because the reason why she's ignoring you or she's not listening to you, because she's triggered by whatever you're doing, and you are triggered by whatever she's doing. So you guys both are stuck in a negative cycle. So you can actually say to yourself and to her, we are stuck in a negative cycle. This is a very important realization to say it out loud, because that will reduce the impact of who is to blame. Nobody is to blame. We are stuck in a negative cycle.
yeah. And if we just go back to step one, we said you say it out loud that I feel disconnected or we're disconnected. And sometimes maybe the other person doesn't realize because they're not recognizing what's happening with you, but you can say it that out loud to the teacher, like, I'm feeling really disconnected and I feel like we're stuck in a negative cycle. And then you can take the conversation from there. So step five is say your needs to feel safe and connected out loud. So this is also probably very, very new. And this is the turning point in conversations and relationships. This is the shift that takes place where you think that in order to resolve a conflict or fix a situation, we need solutions. But in fact, it is quite opposite. We don't need solutions. We don't need to be fixed. But what we do need is to get our emotional needs met. Because when we are emotionally connected, then any problem is solvable. And there are millions ways to do it. And then you work better as a team to solve those problems. So get
If
back into
if
the
I'm
chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go
Mhm.
ahead, Pauline, and then I will.
Get back into the chat and I want you to write what I feel, what I need to be connected, what I need to feel connected is tell me that you care, my feelings are valid, tell me that I matter, that I'm important to you, reassure me. For example, reassurance, like if your fear is to that maybe the other person doesn't trust you, or
I'm
a,
alone.
I have a fear as I'm alone, then the reassure me that I'm not alone. Tell me that I'm valued and acknowledge. Acknowledge is like what most people think would be like an apology. So if you notice, we avoid the word I'm sorry. We avoid the apologies in these conversations because typically when people say I'm sorry, they feel like they have to take responsibility, accountability, or blame for the situation. But when we have you acknowledge what they did to hurt you or to trigger you, that is both people involved in the situation. It's not their fault, but are recognizing that they took part in the way that you're feeling disconnected. So in Monica's situation, she can say, I really need you to, what I need to feel connected is for you to acknowledge that when you do the process that creates a lot of chaos, and, we go back through the steps, and we'll do a recap really quick of the entire conversation. Acknowledge that that was really difficult for me, or that triggered me, or that was hurtful for me, or that's really hard for me.
In
So,
fact, what Monica is writing is that what I need to feel safe and connected is to show me that my ideas are valued. We don't want promises in the future, but what we want to do is recognizing what's happening, because EMC is a present oriented process. What means is, yes, the hurt feelings and the injuries or whatever the triggers that you have experienced maybe in the past, but what we are doing here is we are creating a new corrective emotional experience in the present. So I want to know, what I need to know is that I am valued. Right now, you can recognize. And when people actually recognizing and acknowledging that, what happens to them is they create a connection. They create what we call a repair, because you get the sense that you're not valued in the moment when you get triggered. We are trying to correct the message, because the message fact that the teacher doesn't mean that when she is not listening to you doesn't mean that she doesn't value, but maybe she doesn't listen because she is triggered. She feels helpless, she feels inadequate in the moment, she feels like she's failing as a teacher, she feels embarrassed. So when she behaves in a way that gives you that message that you're not valued, what we're doing is we are correcting that message. And when you are correct the message, you actually repair that connection and you feel safer again.
and so Cece said, does it matter that I need action to feel safe and connected? These examples I considered words, so I don't relate to them, but maybe reassurance, acknowledgement are the closest I can relate to. Yeah, this is very, very common, Cece. We see this and hear this all the time. Because this language and this process is so different, it makes sense that you need action because, like I said, people tend to say, like, I want to get this fixed, or I need to change this behavior. But the thing is, we cannot change anyone, and we cannot actually demand or request people change unless they are emotionally motivated to do so. And the only way that they're emotionally motivated to do so is to understand how you are emotionally impacted by the experience. So, I know in this experience, it feels like words don't actually matter if the cause is not addressed. But you have to remember that in order for the cause to be addressed and the actions to be changed, you have to get that emotionally connected experience first.
Yeah, I want to just give a quick example with the bank manager that I worked with, and I worked with all of their branches. And what happened is that the VP of this whole 15 branches, he was very frustrated with his bank managers are not following a certain procedure. And he would come to them and talk to them nicely, and they would all give some kind of excuses. Some would follow, but not all of them. And he was getting really, really disconnected with them. And as going through the process, he decided to share how it impacts him when they don't follow the procedure. And so he told them that, he wakes up in the middle of the night and he has this continuous to-do list, and he starts to feel like he's not adequate as a manager. He's not effective. He starts to feel not valued, and he starts to feel like his people don't see him as competent leader. And when he shared that with his team, because remember, people want to be connected to you and you want to be connected to them, it really created such an impact on them that from then on, he didn't have to ever remind them to follow this procedure. Even he emailed me 2 months later and he said, Lola, it's amazing. The people are following the procedure without me reminding them. So we want to go back to that survival need that people want to be connected. And when you create that emotional experience and you go and they listen to you and you speak from the heart, it will change. The behavior will change because they will want to make you feel safe and connected because you're important to them. They do value you, but sometimes they get off too and they don't know the process. They don't know how to respond to their emotions and they also get stuck. So when people have a way to repair that connection, they start to feel all kinds of different positive emotions.
Yeah, so I just want to add into my personal experience with my kids. It's like a lot of times parents will want their children to do certain things, right? And follow certain requests, or if they have certain chores. And what I notice with my kids is when they do feel disconnected, then it's constantly like I can see they are not doing those things. They're not following through those chores. They're not participating in the things that they need to participate. They're struggling with, getting their school work done, that sort of thing. But as soon as that they are emotionally connected in this moment, in this turning point in step five, when I tell them, reassure them, acknowledge, share with them my feelings, their feelings are valid, all of a sudden I don't have to ask them. So it's in that same situation, but in personal experience. And it's so consistently effective. Okay. So number six is to help individuals remain accessible, responsive, and engaged.
And I want to say a few words about that because John Bowlby, who actually studied all this attachment and talked about the importance of emotional connection, he said that the most important thing that our brain constantly looks for is that ARE, being accessible, responsive, and engaged. And the key question in attachment relationships is, are you there for me? Are you accessible to me? Are you able to allow to understand what's happening for you? So that is the process of when you can share your raw spots and emotions and image to really impact the other person. It's like you letting them in. You are telling them you are important enough for me to share with you my experience. Are you responsive? And John Bowlby, who said that the most important way to create trust and security in a relationship and connection is to emotionally respond. Just like Paulina said, people are not looking for a solution. They want to know that they're not alone in their experience when they feel overwhelmed. They also want to know that they're not weak and pathetic when they feel so scared and overwhelmed and not knowing how to respond. So, when they have that supportive environment, when you are able to be emotionally attuned and responsive to them, they start to feel more connected. They start to feel grounded. They start to feel more in balance. And that is when their prefrontal cortex opens up, and now they can be flexible. Now they can be open.
So step six is to use these phrases. So let's say you want to help someone navigate through a difficult conversation and it's their side, or maybe you're not actually involved, but you'd like to help them. This is what we do is we train you how to be a master in effectively navigating through difficult conversations and to create this thriving environment. You can use these phrases. So get back into the chat and share one of these. It must be very difficult for you. That makes sense. Thank you for sharing. I understand what happens to you. I would feel the same way. These are all really important. I use them in almost every conversation now that I have. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you being vulnerable. That must be really difficult for you because these are phrases that help us soothe our nervous system, helps us calm down. It lowers cortisol, lowers our cortisol level, which is our stress hormone. So it's we are like talking to the amygdala. Amygdala is the part of the brain that senses whether we're in danger. So these phrases are very memorize them, print them from our book and paste them on your window in the bathroom in your car because it's so important.
And it's actually going to help you to slow things down because emotion is fast. And emotion can be overwhelming and it is contagious. So when the other person is becoming very aggressive or shuts down and you getting triggered, you need to be able to hold your balance and co-regulate each other because we are co-regulators of each other's emotions. So it's really, really, really important to learn those phrases so you can share with them and that will help you to slow things down.
Okay, so the entire process that we taught you today is how to turn a conflict into this connecting conversation. Okay. So how to navigate difficult conversation is to actually turn it into a connected conversation, connecting conversation. So what we went through was step by step so that you can learn how to communicate this way. But as you learn this process and master it, and this is what we specialize in the training, is you'll be able to have this conversation. I got triggered when, my raw spots are, I felt softer and primary emotions, my images, my bodily sensation, my worst fears, automatic thoughts, and protective behaviors, but what I need. So all of these we go through, and then the conversation ends up becoming 10 minutes. So Monica and Monica's situation, you can go through each step in the form in our practice journal, and in our forms, and then you can be ready to communicate these things with the teacher in this way. So it can be easily received, heard, valued, and understood. Okay. And so you want to recap the experience. This is what we want to do. If you guys are, once you are able to recap the entire experience, so you guys did every single step and you put it all together in one conversation, then you've advanced to stage 3. Congratulations. Yes. When you can do this process and communicate in this way using this process, your life is going to be incredible. It's going to be transformative because you won't feel stuck anymore. You won't have those stuck places. Okay, stage 3 is integrating this. So how do we integrate this? Well, good thing is we want to reinforce safety and emotional connection in the workplace, and we do that simply with our masterclass. So we have a special price for you guys today for joining today. We do a masterclass training. We have 8 modules, 60 video lessons. We do all this in depth. So you become an expert in exactly bringing this process to your team, to your workplace. And it's also going to extremely benefit your personal life as well, because these conversations are effective for everything and anyone and everywhere in every relationship. Oh, and the toolkit, which I absolutely love. If you were at the ATD conference, do you have the toolkit, Mom? If
Yes,
you
I
were
do.
at the ATD conference, we had this toolkit also showing that has everything that you need to be successful in this process. So you have practice sessions with us, you get certification hours, we can assess your team and you with emotional safety. Like, how emotional safe are you feeling in the workplace? How emotional safe are you in your team? What is your team emotional safety? We do all of that in this training. And then you have access to this course for an entire year. It's a really incredible program, actually. I did the entire process and it's like so thorough and so in depth. And it is just
Well,
fantastic. We're
you
doing,
also include, you didn't mention about the practice sessions, right? We have
yes, yeah, yeah.
6, we included 6 2-hour practice sessions where you can join the group and you can see how we lead the conversations. You get to practice with the reconnection form, and you actually come back and ask questions and share your maybe stuck places where you're still having difficulties, and we help you to get through that stuck places.
And in our session that we taught at the ATD conference a couple weeks ago, we said how much it costs for you to be stuck in conflicts at work. So it was like, do you remember the number? It was like
Or
7,000.
400,000 if you have 10
Oh yeah.
managers, for example. But for every manager per year, it's costing you like, 7,
Yeah.
it's a lot of money, actually. 400, I know
Thousands of,
400,000 if you have 10 managers, basically.
yes,
Because
thousands of dollars.
the survey shows, the studies show that you spend about 4 hours per week on workplace conflict. So you can calculate 4 hours per week, 52 weeks, you get the
Yeah.
number. And we spend about $170 per hour with all the benefits, all the taxes that you have to pay per employee. So you can calculate how much you're
Yes.
spending.
Yeah, so once you become certified and you understand the process and you really get to understanding how to create this thriving environment into the workplace, then you integrate these bonding conversations on a daily basis. And this is what you get. This is the most amazing part of this entire process. You're going to feel confident. You're going to feel empowered, connected, happier, engaged, excited. You're going to wake up like, yes, I'm so excited to get to work today. Relieved, free, optimistic. You're going to feel all of these emotions you'll also see in the process because we want to experience these emotions and identify what those emotions are after you have these difficult conversations. Willing to explore, open to risk. People who are closed off, who are disconnected, just don't have this process. So they don't understand how valued and important they are. But this is what you receive. This
And
is so priceless.
actually, we are training a lot of internal trainers with the process so they can teach their managers and teams how to have these conversations. It's like another work instructions. It's anything that you are doing in the company, you have work instructions. And this is another work instruction that you can integrate into your process where you say, look, this is how we communicate if
Yep.
there's a disconnection, disengagement. So you get to benefit all of these improvements in your team.
So these are what you will see. Yeah, you'll just in the experience at work is just going to be so much more incredible. And talk about creating a team that's connected, that's thriving, that you don't actually have to nag, you don't have to continue to deal with conflict after conflict. I mean, Monica, imagine like you come to teach and your teacher understands, the teacher that you're working with understands how you're feeling, and now she's understands how overwhelming it is for you and she wants to make sure that you feel valued. We just put the link to the book Navigating Difficult Conversations and the master class. So yeah, imagine that feeling of like just knowing that you have a process now and it works 100% of the time. And so you don't have to wonder anymore if you're going to feel stuck. You don't have to wonder if it's going to get better. You don't have to wonder about changing jobs because you know what? The same conflicts are going to come up in every single job and every single position that you take. So we have another webinar. We thank you guys so much for joining. This is the end of our webinar. So we have that special price. It's $9.95. If you joined our webinar, it's an $3,000 masterclass that we're doing for everyone here that joined, or if you registered, if you stayed for the training, if you listened to the training, participated. We have it for $9.95 today. Also for teams, we do this for companies, large companies, small companies. You can connect with us and we can do a private consultation for you, let you know what we think would be great. Before you go, we have a few minutes for questions. I'm just going to exit this really quick, stop sharing so we can come out of it. Yay! We have some time for questions. Make sure to follow us. We are on YouTube. We have a podcast weekly that you can listen to us talk about different situations in the workplace. And that is EMC Leaders. It's on YouTube and on the podcast Spotify. It's called The Leader in You. And my mom and I host that podcast every single Tuesday. And then also, if you have situations that you need help, that you feel stuck, that you'd like to help us navigate with you, we'd be happy to help support you. So, are there any questions? If there's something that you're feeling uncertain about, if you're feeling stressed over, if you feel like you can't quite understand, and while you think about those questions, I want to tell you that we're doing another webinar because, we just love this so much. But also, we've had a lot of requests for understanding how to create emotional safety in a team. And we've got this amazing assessment. If you were at the ATD conference and you had the opportunity to take the assessment, but we're going to offer this assessment and this webinar in 2 weeks, right? Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
And also we are offering, we including this assessment with the EMC Masterclass.
yeah. So it's a test, and it pretty much shows you how emotionally
Do you
safe
want me
you
to show
feel.
the report? Do you want me to do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
If people
Just
want to think about their questions while we share the report, basically the assessment, assessing the emotional safety with your team and with your manager. And it gives you an individual report where you have the 24 capabilities to create emotional safety. And it actually outlines your 5 top capabilities and the next 5, and then giving you a lot of more ideas on how to improve any of these capabilities. So as you can see, the top 5 goes through the, your actually benefits of how that you are having these capabilities, and the maximize practice ideas, how you can maximize your potential, and red flags. So as you go through the top 5, then you go into the next 6, which are shorter version, and then it actually gives you a little bit more in 3 domains. The 3 domains are the emotional safety and connection, relationship building and support, and team dynamics and culture. And then it again provides you all of these examples so you can take action, you can understand the different terminology in creating emotional safety, as we talked about, like accessibility, emotional regulation, responsiveness, bonding conversations, and so forth. And then gives you a lot of information to increase your awareness. And then as a team, if you take this as a team, we have these team reports where you can see your top capabilities within the team, and then you can see your lowest capabilities within the team. And then you can actually track people who are taking the masterclass to see their performance. And then you have different teams. You can sort it by your specific teams or the people. Okay.
Yay, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. We're so grateful that you took the time to listen to our presentation. We absolutely are just, we love this stuff. We know that it works. We just have, it's changed our life. It's changed our workplace relationships, and we're seeing it change people's lives in all kinds of companies, organizations, and situations. So, yay,
We
Monica, thank
also,
you.
if I can
Grateful.
share, we also
Yeah.
have done this process with over 1,200 cases and have really seen very positive results. I know it feels very unnatural to do that, but we all of this is based on this attachment science. So we know it works because we have seen it and we have
Yeah.
experienced it in our lives. Yes.
Okay, so we'll be in contact. You could be in contact with us, and we
We
will
can
see.
stick around until 1:30, a few more minutes. If
Yeah.
anybody would like to stay and ask us questions, you can turn on your camera if you'd like and talk to us.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are really happy to share with you. Okay.
Yeah. I love that we can kind of integrate this entire system into everything that we do. It's not just about workplace relationships, and we spend so much of our life in the workplace, you know? Years and years. I think I read that we spend more time with our colleagues and at work than we do with anyone else in our and any other part in our life, our experience. So why not have the tools that make it actually enjoyable, connecting for us, and exciting for us to be there?
So I want to
So,
answer a question. What if the person doesn't want to learn or doesn't, is not interested to learning? Actually, what we have seen is that the first thing is we do want to give training. People need to understand the impact they have on each other and that they need each other to create that safe and connected relationship. So when people say, oh, they're not interested, it's not because they're not interested, because they're scared. They are afraid. They don't know how this information may be used or something like that. But when we create the training program and they start to practice and they start to experience, they actually start to feel better. And this is what I have seen when people say like, oh, I don't need to have a relationship with my boss or with the colleague as long as I do my job. Well, it's not really how your brain works. And you can think that you can do your job, but slowly, slowly, the more protective behaviors you will use, the more difficult it becomes for you to do the job. It's more difficult. Not only it becomes difficult for you to do your job, it becomes difficult for you to live your life because you can't sleep. Like I worked with one particular team where the person really protected herself by just avoiding her manager. And the more she avoided, the more aggressive the manager became. So the manager would yell and scream or shame her in front of people in the meeting, and she would just shut down and not talk. She would go around and ask, but the fact is, she started to suffer herself because the brain knows they need a relationship with the boss. The boss is like a parent. The boss is key attachment figure. So it's very difficult becomes to do your job. And especially if you love the place where you worked there for many years, and you have the situation, you really get stuck. She started to have health ailments. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. And when they did the session, when they started to learn this process and integrate and have these conversations where they repaired the relationship, everything started to change. They started to have more fun. They used to work on the same floor and they wouldn't want to meet in the same office. Like they would meet on Zoom. But once they got repaired the relationship, they were meeting, they were having fun. Her health improved. She started to sleep better. Her whole team became better because she was becoming more engaged with her team. So it's very, very important to understand the impact that these disconnections have on us, on our performance, on our work, and on our life. And it's sometimes these negative cycles start to, they come as like not. I would say they like sneak into your relationship. They're very sneaky. And
Mhm.
at first, you don't even recognize what's happening. And then suddenly you say, why am I angry all the time? I used to not be
Mhm.
angry all the time. Why am I so angry all the time? Well, it's because you're using protective behaviors, because you are disconnected with the people that you depend on. So all of these things are very, very critical to our well-being and our performance.
Yeah, I also want to add that we had one lady that came to us at the conference and she said, I work from home. And she said, oh, I don't actually care to have a relationship with my boss. I don't actually care to have a relationship with my colleagues because they're not really that important to me. But as we dug a little deeper, she was sharing how alone she feels.
Yeah, how alone
And
she feels.
so,
That's right.
and so oftentimes we just don't really see, we don't even know what a thriving workplace environment looks like because we're just so used to not being connected. And we're so disconnected in the relationships that we don't realize the importance of how it is to be emotionally connected. And so usually I say, like, well, if you see the symptoms, what are the symptoms that come up? Because our emotions show up physically. Our emotions show up in physical ailments, conditions that just like what you said. Do you roll out of bed and are you excited? Is there something sitting on the back of your mind constantly and you're thinking about this issue that's happening? Or what are those, thought processes? Do you feel completely clear and free when you get to work? Can you be yourself? Can you communicate the things that are on your mind freely? So if any of those answers are no, then that's a sign. That's a sign that there's a disconnections that
And
are
also,
happening.
you become actually confident in yourself. You become confident in how you lead the team. You become confident in sharing your opinion, and you're no longer afraid. So this has really increases your self-awareness, your self-management, your social awareness, and your relationships.
Yeah. Well, I love this so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, and we are happy to help you and to support you
Yeah.
and to really experience, like Polina said, experience of what a thriving place could look like and could feel like.
We are definitely the start of this movement. We hear a lot about people who are emotionally intelligent or learning how to talk about your emotions at work and integrating emotional intelligence. And a lot of times people know how to get to the point where you're actually sharing your emotions, but not know how to get to the point to actually integrate the process into the workplace and how to shift that environment and how to create that thriving workplace. But we have it. And we're the only company and the first company to do a process like this. So we're very excited to bring this to you. Thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you so much.
joining, and we will see you on our next webinar. Yay!
Bye bye.